tribute to the fact that we really are sincere in our efforts to make Columbia as affordable as possible for families. And I think that is, and you'll see in a minute, as we go into this upcoming year, that that is a real need. Sharon alluded to it, and I think John as well, that families are saying that one of their biggest challenges is finding the resources so that their students can be here with us this fall. We had to give back some of our room and board fees this past spring when we closed down the dorms and moved the campus online to the tune of about $9 million altogether. We spent about $1 million so far this year on COVID safety initiatives. And those additional expenses were offset somewhat by the $3 million the college received directly as part of the CARES Funding Act. So overall, we're talking about a $17 million loss for the year. As we were in the spring and going into summer, thinking about this upcoming fall, we did some scenario planning. We always do scenario planning each year as we think about the college's financial health and resources. And so we came up with a couple of scenarios. One, when I say we, I mean my team working with the president and his cabinet. The probable case scenario and what we call the worst case scenario. As you'll see, both of those cases involve significant financial loss. In the probable case, we contemplated a modest enrollment decline, a rollback of the 2% tuition increase, which was announced, I think, a couple of weeks ago, significant residence hall losses. And the residence hall losses stem from the fact that in order to make the residence halls safer for students, we move to a model where we have one student per bedroom, whereas in prior years, students might share a bedroom. So in moving to that model of one student per bedroom, without passing on additional costs to families, the college incurred a loss. And then, of course, continuing to transform our college in light of COVID. So these are continued additional expenses related to our facilities, as well as to creating, again, that robust online environment with investments in our IT areas. The worst case scenario saw a much more significant enrollment decline. The 2% tuition increase, residence hall losses, COVID-related expenses, but it also contemplated the possibility of some additional tuition, or some tuition refunds and some additional fee refunds. So the probable case scenario before taking into account expense reductions the loss ranged anywhere between $37 and $39 million. The worst case scenario between $59 and $60 million losses we contemplated. Again, this was all part of planning for the fall and some scenario planning. We did, and you saw the announcement that President Kim again sent out on Friday. Here's some of the numbers to flesh out a bit of what he said. There have been some key, I think my numbering is off, ignore the numbering there. There are some key items that we, again, going back a couple of months, we sort of sequenced potential cost reductions according to need, meaning that if as the situation became worse, we would go further down our list of actions. Now, President Kim has said over and over again, one of our driving priorities is to preserve as much as possible jobs on campus. So while we can never promise that we won't have to have a reduction in force, that is at the very bottom of our list of actions to take. So compensation and the leadership pay, as was announced Friday, to the tune of about $250,000. Operational cost reductions, that's the 5% reduction activity exercise that we are undergoing across campus right now. Select unit closures to the tune of about $2.3 million. The example is Columbia Online, and then reduction in retirement contributions to the tune of about 2.15 million. If the circumstances get worse and we find that we're trending more towards that worst case scenario, we'll take some additional steps that might include additional compensation impacts and reduction in force. But hopefully, fingers crossed, we won't have to go that far. I'll say something about the losses. We've been working very carefully with the Board of Trustees, and that group has been extraordinarily supportive of our college, even taking actions to ensure that we move enough money in the endowment from long-term equity allocations into short-term cash, meaning that if we run out of cash on the operating side, the board is willing to provide additional support from the endowment. We get about $9 million a year from the endowment to support operations, but they're willing to go even further than that if the college needs it. Okay, so revising the numbers I said before, if we take into account the $9 million reductions that we've planned, we're talking about between a $28 and $32 million loss in the probable case scenario, and in the worst case scenario, about $50 to $52 million losses. I'm happy to say Michael is going to talk more about where he sees enrollment for this fall. But right now, I think we're trending much closer to that probable case scenario. So in my estimates are about 28 to $32 million range, trending closer to the $28 million loss, which is manageable. I think it's very challenging, but it is manageable within the short time frame. Part of my job is to keep an eye on the big picture. What's going to happen in the next fiscal year, and then the fiscal year after that, and the fiscal year after that, to ensure that the college has the financial resources to sustain us for the future. So yes, we need to manage this upcoming year, but we also need to be cognizant of what's going to happen in years after that. So my modeling used to go out just 5 years. Now we're taking it out 10 years. I think Sharon said it best. There are so many variables, so many unknowns. So it's best to, as we model, we also have to temper that with the understanding that there are a lot of unknowns and things will fluctuate. But right now, I think we're estimating about a $28 million loss for this upcoming fiscal year. One thing I will say, and I don't know if Mike was going to touch on this or not, but I put the slide together to help us understand that that we continue to support our students and our families through the allocation of financial aid, and this is really important. And it's an important balance because families are hurting. Some of us met with students this past Friday, and we heard their concerns about how tough financially it is for them and their families. These are continuing students who want to persist, want to graduate from our institution, but who are also looking for additional help. And the college has really been working hard to provide additional financial aid to our students in their times of need. So I thought I'd share this slide. It's 11:43. I think I'll stop here and maybe take some questions.
Perhaps we could we hand off to Michael and then have some questions for the two of you?